The sound of explosions echoed through the corridors of the Kalan flagship's Silver Wing. Sparks fell from the ceiling. Alarms screamed. The ship trembled under the impact of another enemy blast. Blue-skinned Kalan soldiers ran through the burning hallways, trying to seal breaches and carry the wounded. The air was filled with smoke and the smell of melted metal. Captain Nico stumbled into the bridge, his left arm bleeding. He pressed his hand against the wound and looked around. "Status report," he shouted. "3 more ships destroyed, sir," cried the communications officer, her hands shaking as she tried to stabilize the signal. "We have lost 60% of our fleet." Nico looked at the holographic screen before him. Red dots, enemy ships, surrounded the few remaining blue dots of his fleet. The Kalan Republic's peaceful exploration fleet had been turned into a desperate line of defense. The Vorak Empire, a ruthless race known across the stars, was crushing them with cold precision. Their warships were huge, armed with weapons that melted hulls in seconds. Another explosion hit. The deck shuddered. Someone screamed as a console burst into flames. "Fire control. Contain that breach," Nico ordered. He turned to his tactical officer. "How many ships are left near the planet?" "Only 7, Captain," the officer replied. "The rest have been wiped out." Nico clenched his jaw. His heart sank. The Kalan Republic had never been prepared for war. They were traders, scientists, explorers. They had spent centuries building peace, not armies. Now that peace was being torn apart. On the main screen, a Kalan cruiser exploded in a silent flash of light. Thousands of lives gone in a heartbeat. The reflection of the explosion lit up Nico's face. For a moment he said nothing. Then quietly he whispered, "So this is how our story ends." The bridge fell silent, except for the alarms and the distant rumble of engines failing. "Captain," said his communications officer, "the High Council from Kalan Prime requests evacuation. They say the Vorak are bombing the cities." Nico shook his head. "We can't break through their blockade. If we try to run, they'll destroy us before we reach orbit." A loud crash shook the ship again. The artificial gravity flickered. Crew members stumbled as sparks rained from the ceiling. "Deck 7 hull breach," shouted the damage control officer. "Force fields are failing." Nico gripped his chair tightly. "Hold them together as long as you can." He looked at the faces of his crew, tired, wounded, terrified, yet still fighting. These were not soldiers, but they refused to surrender. "Open a channel to all remaining ships," Nico ordered. A few flickering faces appeared on his screen. Other Kalan captains, their ships burning in the void. "My friends," Nico began, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. "We all know how this ends. But every minute we fight gives our people on the surface a chance to live. Fight for them." One by one the captains nodded. No one spoke. No one needed to. "It has been an honor," Nico said softly. The channel closed. On the planet Kalan Prime, far below the burning sky, President Vale sat inside an underground command bunker. He was old now, 70 years, weary but wise. Around him, officers and advisors worked in silence, their faces pale with fear. "The Vorak have landed in 12 cities," said his aide. "Our defenses are gone. The orbital fleet is nearly destroyed." Vale nodded slowly. He had led his people through many challenges, famine, political wars, economic crises, but nothing like this. He stared at the monitor showing burning cities, falling towers, civilians running for cover. Children cried in the streets. Families hid in shelters. "Mr. President," said the communications director, "we are still receiving messages from other civilizations, offers of sympathy only. The Zenturi Federation sends their regrets. The Omega Alliance says they are praying for us." Vale's eyes hardened. Prayers will not stop the Vorak. For a moment, the bunker fell silent except for the distant rumble of explosions from above. Then the communications officer frowned. "Sir, there's something strange. A signal coming from the old deep space beacon array." Vale turned. "That beacon hasn't been used in over a century." "I know, sir," the officer said. "But it's activating on its own." The lights in the bunker flickered as the ancient machine came online. A low hum filled the room, deep, resonant, almost like a heartbeat. "What's it doing?" Vale asked. "It's searching for receivers," the officer replied. "Across every known frequency, even beyond our galaxy." The president stared at the flickering hologram, a pulsing sphere of light, growing brighter. He knew what it was. That beacon was built long ago, back when the Kalan first explored the stars. A relic meant only for the most desperate times. No one had ever dared use it. Until now. Vale slowly stood. His voice was calm, but there was a tremor in it, the sound of a man carrying the weight of billions of lives. "Send the signal," he said. "Sir?" "Send it to anyone who can hear us," he repeated, his eyes fixed on the hologram now glowing white-hot. "Even if they're not from this galaxy." The officer hesitated, then nodded and pressed the final command. A beam of light shot upward through the planet's clouds, tearing into the darkness of space. Far above, amid the wreckage of burning ships and drifting debris, the beacon's pulse spread, a desperate cry, echoing through the endless void. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, something heard it. Far beyond the Kalan homeworld, beyond the burning fleets and dying stars, the signal raced through the void, faster than light, stronger than time. It crossed nebulae, ancient star clusters, and silent galaxies. For thousands of years, it would have traveled unnoticed. But this time something different happened. It reached Earth. In the frozen mountains of Alaska, a lonely radar station stood against the wind. Its domes and antennas scanned the heavens as they did every night. Inside, two operators sat half asleep, sipping cold coffee and watching blinking lights. Then suddenly the room filled with noise. A shrill alarm blared. One of the monitors turned red. "Hey, what the hell is that?" the young technician Miller said as he jumped up. The older operator, Sergeant Vega, squinted at the screen. "That's not a satellite. Not even close." The signal repeated again, a long, low tone followed by a rhythmic pulse. It was too structured to be natural. Vega leaned closer. "It's a distress call," he said slowly. "But it's not human." The two men stared at each other for a moment, realizing what that meant. Vega turned to the console and hit the emergency line. "This is listening post 47, he said quickly. "We've just received an unknown signal from deep space. Patterns artificial, repeating. You're going to want to hear this." Within hours, the message reached Earth Fleet Command, a massive orbital station circling the planet. Inside, admirals, scientists, and intelligence officers gathered in a dark briefing room, the projection of the signal pulsing in front of them. "It's ancient," said Dr. Patel, the chief xenolinguist. "The technology is old, but the transmission strength is incredible. It crossed galaxies to reach us." "Can you translate it?" asked Admiral Hayes, commander of Earth's defense fleet. Patel nodded slowly. "We're working on it. But from what I can tell, it's a plea for help." "From whom?" Patel looked at him. "A civilization called the Kalan Republic. They're under attack." The room went silent. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the holographic projector. The image showed a fragment of the original signal, a short video damaged by distance and time. Through static, a blue-skinned alien appeared, tired, desperate, wounded. His voice trembled as he spoke words that transcended language. "To whoever can hear this, our world is falling. We seek peace, not war. Please, help us." When the message ended, no one spoke. Admiral Hayes stood slowly. His sharp gray eyes scanned the room. "How old is the signal?" "Based on decay rate," Patel said, "about 16 hours. Hayes nodded. "Then they're still out there." Earth had changed over the centuries. After surviving near extinction during the Great Resource Wars, humanity had united under a single banner, the United Earth Federation. They had built fleets, colonies, and defenses, not to conquer but to protect. They had promised never to repeat their violent past. But deep inside, humanity had not forgotten how to fight. In the vast hangars of the orbital shipyards, technicians worked tirelessly as orders spread across the network. Engines roared, drones loaded supplies, and massive warships powered up their reactors. The flagship EFS Dauntless stood ready, a beast of steel and light 5 kilometers long, built for defense but capable of war. On its bridge, Admiral Hayes stared out at the blue curve of Earth below. A voice came through his earpiece. "Sir, the fleet is ready for launch. All ships are fueled and armed." Hayes didn't turn. His eyes stayed fixed on the stars. "Open a secure channel to the Council." A moment later, the holographic faces of world leaders appeared around him. The Global Security Council, representing every nation on Earth. Hayes spoke calmly but firmly. "We have confirmed contact with an alien civilization. They're being attacked by a hostile force called the Vorak Empire. They're asking for help." One of the council members frowned. "You're suggesting we send the fleet beyond our borders? Into another galaxy? That's a risk to our own world." Hayes turned his gaze toward them. "Once, someone ignored our cries for help too. We swore we would never do the same." The room was quiet. Then the president of the council, an older woman with silver hair, nodded slowly. Admiral Hayes, she said. You have authorization. Proceed with Operation Dawnlight. Hours later, the great engines of Earth's war fleet thundered to life. Thousands gathered on the ground, watching from cities and colonies across the planet as the night sky lit up with streaks of light, ships rising from the atmosphere like shooting stars. Children pointed at the sky in wonder. News feeds buzzed with excitement and fear. Humanity was leaving the solar system, not for conquest but for compassion. Inside the Dauntless, Hayes stood at the command deck, surrounded by officers and glowing consoles. Set coordinates for the Kalan system, he ordered. Coordinates locked, replied the navigator. Hayes took a deep breath. Engage the FTL drive. A deep hum filled the ship as energy built up. Outside, a brilliant blue light expanded, wrapping around the fleet like a living aura. The stars stretched into streaks. Then, in an instant, the entire armada vanished into hyperspace. For a long moment, the void was silent again. The beacon's pulse slowed, then faded. On Kalan Prime, far away, President Vale stood before the dying beacon, watching its final flicker of light. He whispered to himself, "If anyone hurt us, please let them come." Outside, the sky burned red as Vorak warships began their orbital bombardment. And light years away, unseen by any of them, humanity's fleet tore through the darkness, faster, stronger, and angrier than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Because when humanity answers a call for help, it never comes quietly. The burning skies of Kalan Prime glowed red as the Vorak Empire's fleet began its final assault. From orbit, massive warships covered the planet like dark clouds. Each one was the size of a city, made of black metal and pulsing with crimson energy. Their cannons fired beam after beam, slicing through the upper atmosphere. Towers fell. Oceans boiled. Entire cities vanished in fire. The Vorak commander, Lord Kareth, stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Vengeance of Dawn. His cold reptilian eyes watched the destruction below without emotion. "Report," he said. His voice was deep and metallic, carried through the mechanical implants that lined his throat. A lesser officer bowed. "Resistance is minimal, my lord. The last of their defense fleet is destroyed. Ground forces are entering the cities." "Good," Kareth replied. "Begin slave collection. We will need workers for the mines of Vorthar." The officer hesitated. "And the rest of the population?" Kareth's eyes narrowed. "Burn them. Leave only ashes. I will not have weak blood pollute my empire." The officer nodded quickly and left. Kareth turned his gaze back to the planet. "Another world falls," he murmured. "Another empire forgotten." To him this was not war. It was routine. The Vorak had conquered hundreds of systems this way. None had ever fought back with success. But deep down, beneath his arrogance, something inside him felt different. A faint signal deep in the void had brushed against his fleet sensors, a transmission of unknown origin. Too faint to trace but powerful enough to notice. He dismissed it as static. He would regret that. On the surface of Kalan Prime, chaos reigned. The once beautiful cities of glass and silver now lay in ruins. Smoke filled the air and the cries of the wounded echoed through the streets. Groups of civilians ran through burning rubble, clutching children, dragging injured family members. In the distance, Vorak walkers, giant machines with glowing red eyes, marched through the streets, firing into anything that moved. In an underground shelter beneath the old capital, President Vale and his remaining council watched the holoscreens in horror. Every feed showed destruction. Every transmission ended in silence. "How long until they reach us?" Vale asked quietly. "Not long, sir," replied his security chief. "They're only 2 districts away." Vale nodded. His old hands trembled as he leaned on the table. "What of the distress beacon?" "The signal has been sent," said the communications officer. "But there's been no response yet." Vale sighed. His eyes looked distant. "Perhaps no one heard us, or perhaps they're too far away." He looked around the room, the faces of his people, broken and exhausted. He thought of the billions who had trusted him to protect them. "Sir," said the aide beside him, "there's still time to escape. We have 1 shuttle left." "No," Vale said. "My place is here." He turned his gaze to the burning ceiling above. "If our world ends tonight, I will face it with them." Outside, the ground shook as another Vorak bombardment hit nearby. The lights flickered. Dust fell from the ceiling. In the chaos, no one noticed a faint ping on one of the radar screens, a pulse repeating slowly. The technician frowned. "Sir, I'm detecting something strange." Vale turned. "What is it?" The young officer adjusted the controls. It's a distortion in subspace. Like a gravitational shockwave. The others looked confused. In simple terms, the officer said, something massive just entered the system. Vale's heart skipped a beat. Is it more Vorak ships? I don't know, sir, the officer replied. It doesn't match their signature. Everyone in the room froze. For a moment, hope flickered where there had only been despair. Far above the planet, among the wreckage of Kalen's ships, Captain Nico's battered cruiser still drifted. Sparks flickered through the broken bridge. Half the crew was gone. The rest worked quietly, refusing to give up. Power levels are critical, said the engineer. Weapons offline. Shields failing. Nico sat back in his chair, staring out at the stars. His voice was weak but calm. At least we tried. The communications officer suddenly looked up. Captain, I'm getting a reading. What kind of reading? She frowned. I'm not sure. Enormous. Energy signatures we've never seen before. The tactical display flickered to life. New blips appeared, bright blue ones, dozens of them, emerging from the edge of the system. Nico leaned forward, eyes wide. That can't be right. The officer's voice trembled. They're not Vorak, but whatever they are, they're fast. Outside the ship, streaks of blue light flashed across the darkness, one after another like shooting stars piercing the void. The stars themselves seemed to bend as massive vessels dropped out of hyperspace. The first one was enormous, smooth, silver, with glowing blue thrusters and the markings of a human hand. Behind it, an entire fleet followed. Carriers, destroyers, cruisers, all armed, all ready. The Kalen crew stared in disbelief. Who are they? Someone whispered. The communications officer's console beeped. Incoming transmission, Captain. Nico hesitated, then said softly, put it through. A calm, firm voice filled the bridge, strong, human, unmistakably determined. This is Admiral Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. We received your signal, and we're here to help. For a moment no one spoke. Even Nico was silent. Then, as the realization sank in, the bridge erupted in tears and laughter. They had been heard. On the other side of the system, the Vorak sensors went wild. Lord Kareth turned sharply toward his science officer. Report. New ships detected, my lord, the officer stammered. Unknown configuration. Power readings, off the charts. Kareth narrowed his eyes. Another weak alliance trying to play hero? The officer swallowed hard. Sir, there are over 100 ships. And their main vessel is larger than any known model. Kareth stepped closer to the viewing window. Far in the distance, through the blackness of space, he saw it. A gleaming formation of blue and silver light, approaching fast. He felt something he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. Ready all weapons, he hissed. Let's see who dares challenge the Vorak Empire. In the silence between galaxies, two fleets faced each other. One born from cruelty and domination, the other forged in the ashes of human unity. And in that moment the universe held its breath. Because for the first time in 1,000 years, the Vorak Empire would meet something greater than fear. They would meet humanity. The void between stars was silent, until the humans arrived. A ripple of light tore across the black sky as the United Earth Fleet exited hyperspace. Dozens of colossal ships shimmered into existence, their metallic hulls reflecting the distant sun. Each vessel bore the blue insignia of Earth, a symbol unseen in this galaxy, yet destined to be remembered. At the front of the formation, the EFS Dauntless led the charge, 5 kilometers long, its hull bristling with advanced rail cannons and plasma batteries. Inside the command deck, Admiral Hayes stood before the viewing screen, arms behind his back, eyes sharp as steel. He had seen wars before but never one like this. The screen displayed the burning world of Kalen Prime, half covered in smoke. Thousands of fires glowed across its surface. Wreckage drifted in orbit, shattered ships, frozen bodies, fragments of dreams. Hayes took a slow breath. My God, they weren't exaggerating. His second-in-command, Commander Ruiz, looked up from her console. Sir, multiple hostile signatures detected. Vorak fleet in high orbit. Estimate, 60 warships remaining. Any contact from the Kalen survivors? Negative, sir. But I'm picking up faint distress signals near the planet. Hayes nodded. Open all channels. Let's introduce ourselves. Aboard the crippled Kalen cruiser Silver Wing, Captain Nico and his crew stared in awe at the approaching human fleet. For a long moment, no one dared speak. Then the communications console crackled to life. This is Admiral Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. We received your signal, and we're here to help. The bridge fell silent. The crew looked at Nico, eyes wide with disbelief. He leaned forward slowly. "This is Captain Nico of the Kalan Defense Force," he replied, voice shaking. We didn't think anyone would come." Hayes' calm, steady voice replied through the static. "You called for help. Humanity answers." Tears filled the eyes of the Kalan crew. For the first time in days there was hope. On the other side of the system, inside the Vorak flagship, Lord Kareth watched the human fleet take formation. He was not impressed, at least not yet. "Identify them," he ordered coldly. His sensor officer worked quickly. "Unknown configuration. Power signatures, extreme. Their ships are smaller than ours, but their energy readings are unusual." Kareth sneered. "Smaller ships mean smaller threats. Arm all batteries. Let's crush these newcomers before they even get close." He turned toward the viewport, the light of Kalan Prime's burning cities reflecting in his golden eyes. "They dare to interfere with the Vorak Empire? Let them learn fear." Back aboard the Dauntless, the radar screens lit up with movement. "Vorak ships are repositioning," said Ruiz. "They're targeting us." Hayes didn't flinch. "Tactical ready shields. Weapons hot. All ships, defensive pattern Delta 1. A chorus of confirmations echoed through the comms. Across the fleet, thousands of gun ports opened, energy shields shimmered to life, and long-range cannons powered up. Hayes turned toward the comms officer. "Send a wideband message to the Vorak fleet." "Yes, sir." Hayes' voice was calm but carried the weight of command. "This is Admiral Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. Cease your attack on the Kalan Republic and withdraw from this system immediately, or face the consequences." The message was broadcast in multiple languages, translated automatically across every Vorak ship. Kareth laughed when he heard it. "Face the consequences? You presume to threaten us? Open fire." A heartbeat later, the void erupted. Dozens of Vorak battleships unleashed a storm of plasma bolts and energy beams. The sky lit up with red fire, streaks of light cutting across the stars. "Brace for impact," shouted Ruiz. The Dauntless shook violently as the first wave of enemy fire slammed into its shields. Alarms blared, the lights flickered. Shields holding at 80%. Hayes didn't move. His eyes were locked on the tactical display. "Return fire." And with that, humanity answered. Blue light blazed across the darkness as the Earth fleet fired in unison. Railgun slugs the size of cars shot from the Dauntless, traveling at near light speed. Plasma lances arced from destroyers, cutting through space like lightning. The first Vorak cruiser exploded instantly, torn apart before its shields could react. The second was hit by 3 consecutive railgun rounds. Its reactor overloaded, turning the ship into a ball of flame. Within seconds, 6 Vorak ships were gone. The Kalan survivors watched from afar in complete disbelief. Captain Nico whispered, "By the stars, they're winning." On the Vorak flagship, chaos spread. Shields failing. "We've lost the Wrathborn." "The eclipse is gone," shouted the officers. Lord Kareth slammed his clawed fist onto the console. "Impossible. Their weapons shouldn't be that powerful." But the evidence was clear. Human technology was unlike anything the Vorak had ever faced. Their precision, their discipline, their raw power, it was overwhelming. "Pull back." Kareth roared. "Regroup the fleet." But it was too late. Hayes gave the next order without hesitation. "Target their flagship. Fire the Nova Lance." A deep hum filled the Dauntless. The forward cannons glowed bright blue as energy built to dangerous levels. "Nova Lance charged," said the weapons officer. Hayes raised his hand, then lowered it. "Fire." A single beam of concentrated plasma burst from the ship's bow, cutting through space like a sword of light. It struck the Vorak flagship dead center. The explosion was blinding, a silent, expanding fireball that swallowed the ship whole. When the light faded, nothing remained but debris. Across the Kalan system, the surviving Vorak ships began to retreat. Their once fearless soldiers now fled, their discipline shattered. On the Dauntless bridge, the crew erupted into cheers. Commander Ruiz smiled for the first time in days. "Sir, the Vorak are retreating." Hayes exhaled slowly, watching the enemy fleet vanish into hyperspace. "Let them run. They'll warn the rest of their empire that Earth has arrived." He turned toward the comms officer. "Open a line to the Kalan surface." In the bunker beneath Kalan Prime, President Vale could hardly believe the reports coming in. "The Vorak are retreating, sir. The skies are clear." Tears filled the old man's eyes. He turned to the screen showing the human flagship now orbiting the planet, its hull shining like a beacon. A transmission opened and Admiral Hayes appeared, calm, collected, his uniform scorched from battle. "President Vale," he said. "Your people are safe for now. Earth Fleet is here to assist." Vale stood silently, overcome with emotion. Then he spoke, voice trembling. "We thought we were alone. We were wrong." Hayes nodded. "You're not alone anymore." As the Dauntless moved into low orbit, rescue ships launched toward the planet, their lights streaking through the clouds. The people of Kaelin looked up from the ruins of their cities, watching in awe as unfamiliar ships descended from the sky, ships that carried hope. And in the heart of the Dauntless, Admiral Hayes stood before the stars, his reflection shimmering on the glass. He whispered quietly to himself, "Humanity didn't come here to conquer. We came here to remind the galaxy what it means to stand together." Outside, the wreckage of the Vorak fleet drifted silently, a graveyard of tyranny. But somewhere in the dark, beyond the edge of this system, other Vorak ships watched, recording, retreating, reporting. The war was far from over. The stars over Kaelin Prime burned brighter than ever. Where once there had been silence and fear, now there was motion, light, and purpose. The United Earth Fleet had arrived, not as conquerors but as protectors. In orbit, hundreds of human ships glided like silver arrows against the darkness. Some ferried wounded Kaelin survivors to safety. Others scanned the wreckage of destroyed Vorak ships for technology and survivors. But deep inside the Dauntless, Admiral Hayes knew this was only the beginning. He stood before the massive display screen, arms crossed, eyes cold. The screen showed a tactical map of the local sector. Red dots, Vorak reinforcements, were gathering beyond the system's edge. "Report," Hayes said calmly. Commander Ruiz replied, "Long-range sensors have detected multiple jump signatures. Estimated 30 ships, maybe more, inbound from the Vorak border." 30, Hayes repeated, his tone quiet. "They're sending another wave." "Yes, sir. And these aren't patrol vessels. These are heavy warships." Around them, the Dauntless crew grew tense. The atmosphere felt heavy, the calm before another storm. Hayes looked at the tactical officer. "Time until contact?" 17 hours, Admiral." He nodded. "Then we prepare. Humanity doesn't retreat." The call for unity. Meanwhile, on Kaelin Prime, President Vale stood in the newly restored command center. Screens displayed live footage of human soldiers helping Kaelin civilians, unloading supplies and repairing power grids. He turned to Captain Nico, who now wore a bandage across his arm but stood tall again. "Captain," Vale said softly, "I never thought I would see the day when aliens would come to save us." Nico smiled weakly. "Nor did I, sir. But these humans, they fight like no one else. They're fierce, disciplined, and yet, kind." Vale nodded. "Then we must stand beside them. The Vorak won't stop here." Nico looked out at the horizon where the wreckage of old ships still burned. "No, they won't. But now, neither will we." Preparation for war. Back aboard the Dauntless, the entire fleet buzzed with activity. Repair drones patched hulls. Fighter pilots ran final checks on their sleek black ships. Engineers recalibrated weapons and reloaded missile silos. In the hangar bay, a group of Kaelin engineers worked side by side with human technicians, sharing knowledge and tools. One of them, a young Kaelin named Tari, stared in awe at the massive human battle mech being loaded onto a transport. "It's like a walking fortress," she whispered. The human next to her smiled. "That's the Atlas Mark IV. Built to hold the line when everything else fails." Tari looked at him curiously. "You build machines to fight your wars?" He nodded. "No," he said softly. "We build them so fewer of us have to die in them." The calm before the storm. Hours later, the fleet gathered at the edge of the Kaelin system, waiting. The stars ahead shimmered, and then the space tore open. Vorak reinforcements arrived. Massive ships, their hulls black and red, bristling with weapons. They outnumbered the human fleet 2-1. On the Dauntless bridge, the tension was electric. "Admiral," Ruiz said, "enemy fleet in visual range." "Put it on screen." The view shifted, showing the Vorak armada emerging from hyperspace. At its center was a gigantic vessel, the Vorak warlord's flagship, known as the Devourer. It dwarfed even the Dauntless. Hayes watched silently, his eyes narrowing. "So, they've brought their king." Ruiz frowned. "Sir, if we engage that many ships head-on, we'll be surrounded." Hayes smiled slightly. "Good. Then they won't be able to run. The battle begins." The Vorak fleet opened fire first. Bolts of plasma streaked across the void, slamming into human shields. The impact was tremendous, ships shook, alarms blared and decks trembled. "Shields holding at 70%, shouted Ruiz. "Return fire," Hayes barked. A moment later the dark sky ignited with blue light. The human fleet answered with precision and fury, railguns firing in synchronized volleys, plasma torpedoes streaking through the stars. Each hit was surgical. Each explosion painted the void with burning debris. 2 Vorak destroyers went down instantly. Then 3 more. But the enemy was vast, they kept coming. "Multiple Vorak ships breaking formation," said the tactical officer. "They're trying to flank us." Hayes nodded. "Deploy the second line. Bring in the courageous and vigilant to intercept." On his command 2 Earth destroyers peeled off, diving straight into the Vorak flank. Their guns blazed, carving a path through enemy lines. The Dauntless shook again. "Direct hit on Deck 12, shouted Ruiz. "Fire teams responding." Hayes gritted his teeth. "We hold the line. No retreat." Desperation and courage. On the Kalan surface, the people watched from the ground as the battle lit up the night sky. Every explosion looked like a star being born, or dying. In the underground bunker, President Vale listened to the comms chatter. "This is the Vigilant. We've lost main engines but we're ramming the enemy cruiser. Godspeed, Vigilant. You'll be remembered." A Kalan child looked up from beside her mother, eyes full of fear. "Mom, are they winning?" Her mother whispered, "They're fighting for us. That means they already have." The turning point. Back in orbit, the battle reached its peak. The Vorak flagship Devourer moved forward, massive cannons charging. A beam of red energy erupted from its core, slicing through space. It struck the Dauntless directly. The bridge shuddered, sparks flying. Consoles burst into flame. "Shields down to 20%. Ruiz shouted. "Hull breach on lower decks." Hayes steadied himself, gripping the railing. His eyes burned with determination. "Target their flagship's reactor core," he said. "All batteries, full power." "But sir, our systems are—" "Do it." The Dauntless roared to life, every weapon firing at once. Hundreds of blue streaks crossed the darkness, slamming into the Devourer's hull. The impact was so massive that even the planet below could see the explosion ripple through the sky. The Vorak flagship cracked open, its core glowing white-hot. Karatha's furious voice echoed across the comms. "You think this changes anything, humans? The Vorak Empire spans 1,000 worlds." Hayes leaned forward. "Then we'll free 1,000 more." He turned to Ruiz. "Fire the Nova Lance." The great cannon fired once more, a blinding blue light that pierced through the Devourer's heart. The Vorak flagship exploded in a silent flash that engulfed the surrounding ships. When the light faded, nothing remained. The battlefield went quiet. Victory, and warning. Cheers erupted across the Dauntless bridge. Crew members hugged, shouted, cried. "Sir," said Ruiz, smiling through tears, "the Vorak fleet is retreating again. We did it." Hayes nodded, but his expression was grim. "Scan for remaining signals. Make sure they're really gone." Moments later, the sensor officer spoke. "Sir, we're detecting long-range communications from the retreating ships. They're sending a signal deeper into Vorak space." Hayes exhaled slowly. "Then the real war begins now." He turned toward the stars, vast, cold, and endless. "Send word to Earth," he said quietly. "Tell them humanity is no longer just defending our home, we're defending the galaxy." Epilogue. In the days that followed, the Kalan rebuilt their cities with human help. Their people spoke of the guardians from the blue planet, the warriors who came through the stars when all hope was lost. But Admiral Hayes knew this peace was temporary. The galaxy had gone quiet. Too quiet. Weeks passed since the great battle over Kalan Prime. The wreckage of the Vorak fleet still drifted across the stars, silent reminders of the day humanity changed the course of galactic history. The Kalan rebuilt their cities with Earth's help. Children played under skies no longer filled with fire. Factories worked day and night, producing food, medicine, and supplies. And yet, deep in the darkness between stars, something was stirring. Echoes of revenge. On board the EFS Dauntless, Admiral Hayes stood on the command deck, gazing at the holographic display. It showed a growing red cluster at the edge of the map, Vorak territory. "Still no word from our scouts?" he asked. Commander Ruiz shook her head. "We've lost contact with 2 recon ships near the border. No distress signals. Just silence." Hayes frowned. "That's not silence. That's strategy." He turned toward the navigation officer. Plot a course to Sector Theta 9. Let's see what the Vorak are planning. Inside the storm. 3 hours later, the Dauntless exited hyperspace into a graveyard. The wrecks of hundreds of ships, Kalan, human and unknown, floated lifelessly among the stars. The air on the bridge felt heavy. Radiation levels are high, Ruiz reported. This must have been a battle zone, but not ours. Hayes narrowed his eyes. Scan for life signs. The sensors beeped weakly. One faint signal, sir. Coming from that asteroid ahead. Bring us closer. Launch a shuttle. Moments later, a small human shuttle glided across the debris field. Its lights cut through the darkness and landed on the asteroid's surface. Inside, the crew found something impossible, a survivor. A Kalan pilot, half-conscious, covered in burns. They rushed him aboard. Sir, said the medic, he's barely alive, but he's trying to say something. Hayes knelt beside him. The pilot's skin shimmered faintly under the light. The Vorak, he whispered. They have a new weapon. What kind of weapon? Hayes asked. The Kalan's eyes filled with terror. Not ships. Not soldiers. A world destroyer. Then his pulse flatlined. The World Eater. Back in Vorak space, inside the red nebula known as the Veil of Kareth, the Vorak Warlord Council gathered around a colossal hologram. At the center stood High Warlord Threx, heir to the fallen Lord Kareth. His armor gleamed dark as obsidian, his voice deep and cold. The humans think they've won, he growled. They destroyed our fleets, killed our kin, humiliated our empire. Around him, the other warlords hissed and roared. But they don't understand, Threx continued. The Vorak Empire is eternal. And soon they will witness our vengeance. He turned to the hologram behind him. It showed a massive construct, a machine the size of a moon, covered in black metal and glowing crimson veins. The Devourer Prime. Forged from the remains of dying stars, fueled by energy siphoned from entire planets, and built to annihilate civilizations in a single blast. When the Devourer Prime awakens, Threx declared, their worlds will burn. Starting with Kalan Prime. The warlords roared in approval. The galaxy's darkest day was about to begin. The alliance forms. Meanwhile, on Kalan Prime, President Vale stood with Admiral Hayes in the new Galactic Council Hall, a shining dome built from human steel and Kalan crystal. Representatives from 5 other species filled the room, frightened, desperate, but willing to listen. Vale spoke first. We all saw what the Vorak are capable of. They've destroyed hundreds of civilizations. They'll destroy yours next. A reptilian delegate hissed nervously. You expect us to fight the Vorak? They've ruled for centuries. Hayes stepped forward. His voice was firm, calm, and human. No one said it would be easy. But together we can fight them. Humanity didn't come to conquer you, we came to stand with you. The room went silent. Then a Kalan engineer, Tari, spoke up. We've combined our technology with the humans. Our new defense systems can resist the Vorak for longer. If we unite, we have a chance. One by one, the delegates nodded. The Galactic Defense Alliance was born. The enemy arrives. Days later, alarms blared across every fleet. Multiple hyperspace breaches. Ruiz shouted. Vorak fleet incoming, and something massive behind them. Hayes rushed to the viewport. Space itself began to bend. A red vortex opened, lightning crackling through the void. From it emerged the Devourer Prime, so large that it eclipsed the nearby moon. Its surface glowed like molten metal, and enormous tendrils of energy reached outward, draining light from the nearby stars. My God, whispered Ruiz. It's alive. Hayes clenched his fists. Not for long. All ships, battle stations. The battle for Kalan Prime. The sky above Kalan Prime exploded with light. Thousands of allied ships, human, Kalan, and other races, formed a defensive wall between the planet and the Devourer Prime. The Vorak fleet surged forward, their ships firing waves of plasma and antimatter. The void became a sea of red and blue fire. Shields at 60%, shouted Ruiz. Keep firing. Hayes roared. Target their forward batteries. The Dauntless unleashed a barrage of railgun rounds, tearing through enemy cruisers. The Kalan frigates darted between human ships, their smaller weapons cutting down enemy fighters. But nothing stopped the Devourer Prime. Its central core glowed brighter, then unleashed a beam of pure energy that ripped through space. It struck 3 allied ships, vaporizing them instantly. Evade! Ruiz shouted. It's targeting anything with high power output. Hayes slammed his fist on the console. We need to take out that weapon before it charges again. Operation Black Spear. In the tactical room, Hayes made a choice that would define the future of the galaxy. He turned to his captains through the comms. This is Admiral Hayes. The Devourer Prime's weapon core is vulnerable, but it's buried deep inside. We'll have to strike from within. Commander Ruiz stared at him. You're suggesting a suicide run. Hayes gave a faint smile. No. I'm suggesting a message, that humanity never runs from darkness. He looked at the screen. Prepare Operation Black Spear. The final run. A formation of ships, the Dauntless, the Valor, and 2 Kalan cruisers, charged toward the Devourer Prime. They dodged fire, weaving through debris and plasma storms. As they approached, the massive machine turned, its eyes of red energy glowing like suns. Now, shouted Hayes. The Dauntless fired all remaining torpedoes. The Kalan ships followed, striking the Devourer's outer plating. It cracked open, revealing its glowing inner core. But the weapon began to charge again. Energy buildup detected. Ruiz warned. It's going to fire. Hayes took a deep breath. Then we fire first. He opened the ship's final command code. Arm the Nova Lance. All power to main cannon. The Dauntless began to shake. Lights dimmed. The hull glowed from heat. Ruiz looked at him. If we do this, there's no coming back. Hayes stared straight ahead. Humanity didn't come this far to turn away now. Fire. The Nova Lance fired, a brilliant beam of blue energy that pierced straight into the Devourer's heart. The light was so intense it blinded every sensor. A moment later, silence. Then, the Devourer Prime exploded, sending a shockwave across the entire sector. Aftermath. When the light faded, only debris remained. The Dauntless floated motionless, its hull scarred and burning. It's over. Hayes smiled faintly. Stars. No, Commander. It's just beginning.